the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
For sure. Florida here. Speaking of coaches on the hot seat here, your main character for the Florida Gators this fall will be who, Matt Green?
Okay, sir. This is my hot take. This is the one I've been waiting on. The main character for the Florida Gators, sir, is DJ Lagway. That is going to be what their season is measured on, because this Florida season is not going to go well, but I feel like it's going to be maybe like a Desmond Ridder situation with Arthur Smith. Like he's not playing the whole season, and then at the end of the year, Desmond Ridder showed some signs. Maybe we'll hold on to him next year. Obviously, I think most people prefer DJ Lagway be better than Desmond Ridder, but I think we're going to see a situation of maybe Florida starts, maybe they start decent, maybe they're 3-3 or something, and there's nothing really to play for. And then it's like, okay, let's get that future quarterback in there. Maybe in some games, Lagway kind of, creates a buzz, and then all of a sudden they just put him in the starting lineup. And we start to see maybe Florida goes 5-7 next year, but by the last 2 or 3 games of the season, it's like, okay, this guy looks like he could be a star. And I think that's the type of thing that could save Billy Napier's job, is like, okay, it was another bad season. It was a 3rd losing season in a row, but I feel like we got our star quarterback that could take us to the next level. Maybe Napier's all right. Maybe the SEC got harder. Maybe we need to adjust our expectations a little bit. Maybe it's going to take a little longer than we thought to get back up there. But I think having a quarterback that looks like a star, I think that can go a long way for a fan base and kind of just the overall temperature of the program. And I think that's what's going to happen. Like, Graham Mertz doesn't feel like the kind of guy that's going to be bad enough to lose the job. But I feel like, just one of those situations, maybe it's not the quarterback's fault, but you're like, after a few games, you're like, the offense is stale. Like, something just needs to change just for the sake of change. And Lagway comes in and you see the offense go to another level. I think and then just the promise of the future, I think, will be like the silver lining on maybe a third, it'll be a 4th straight season that they would have. No, they did make a bowl game, but they ended with a losing record. So the 2nd straight year.
They got shut out in that bowl game by Oregon State, right?
Yeah, that was 2022.
I think they had a kick. What did they celebrate? The made field goal. What happened? What did they do? Wasn't there a weird
I don't
tweet
know. They've
celebrating?
had a really long streak of not getting shut out. Like,
that's what it is.
Like
yes,
the 80s or 90s. Like a couple of those Georgia blowouts, like 2017 and maybe one a couple years ago. They've like gotten a 4th quarter touchdown and like celebrated it.
That's what it was. Goodness gracious. I'm going to zag here, Matt Green. Like I said, I think people are all zoning in, and I understand the schedule for Florida. They're zoning in on Florida as the 3-9 disaster, Billy Napier losing his job team. I just talked about the one who I'm zagging on. It's South Carolina. I think South Carolina is the team who actually has the season from hell. Is my guess right now, as we sit here now on July 1st. I don't think it's going to be Florida, Matt Green. And Eugen Wilson is one of the reasons. He's my main character for the Florida Gators this fall. He's a former 5-star. He's going to his sophomore year. He was really good in the Utah game. I don't know if you remember right out of the gate. He is a do-it-all Swiss Army knife. Like, I don't know if he's Percy Harvin. Like, those guys just don't come around very often. But he's a 5-star for a reason. Like, I think people need to understand. Eugen Wilson, in 10 games, he had 7 starts last year. He finished with a team high, 6 touchdowns. He was 2nd on the team in receptions and only 7 starts with 61, 538 receiving yards. He ran the ball well. Like, he's someone who can be used in so many different ways. Like, if he's healthy for a full year, I think Eugen Wilson's going to be really, really good for Florida. And Graham Mertz is the type of quarterback where it's like, he's not going to throw picks. Just get the ball in Eugen Wilson's hands. Like, keep him on the field. Eugen Wilson, I think, is actually one of the most talented receivers in the conference going into this year. So for me, I'm pretty, I think he's a main character where if Florida gets off to some early success, I think a lot of it is because Eugen Wilson and this offense is exceeding expectations. And I think Eugen Wilson could be the next really big time, do it all Swiss Army knife kind of skill position guy. So I'm pretty high on Eugene Wilson. So he's my main character. Matt Green.
Yeah, I like that. He was like the scariest weapon on their offense a year ago. As good as Pearsall is, he didn't terrify you. Like
Pearsall was good.
Pearsall
He's just
was
not a number one. Yeah.
Eugene Wilson's a game changer. Like the way just the yards after catch ability, just he's a dynamic athlete. I think he just kind of scares you, kind of takes the top off a little differently than Pearsall.
For sure. Reverses, this, that, and the other. I think Eugene Wilson is just gonna be a really good player at Florida. All that being said, they're only 2.5-point dogs at home against Miami to kick things off. I think people are penciling in Miami and Mario Cristobal to just walk into the swamp and win this game. I think they're getting a little ahead of themselves. Like I've talked about in our predictions.
2.5 is pretty close.
Huh?
2.5 is pretty close.
That's what I'm saying. And I think people have just penciled in Miami and have penciled in that like Florida's going to have this terrible season. The schedule doesn't start that horrible for Florida, Matt Green. Like it's tough, but you get Samford at home. I think there's a very real chance that they beat Miami to kick things off. Like I'll believe Florida loses it at home when I see it against Miami. You get A&M with a new coach at home in week 3. They might be favored there. So then you're looking at 3-0 for Florida, building momentum. You go to Mississippi State, which I understand is hard sometimes to play. They're going to be favored. Jeff Lebby, year 1, Blake Shapen's their quarterback. They might be a disaster this first year at Mississippi State. That's a very winnable game for Florida. Then they get UCF. We talk about like them having to play all the Florida schools. Well, they play 2 of them at home. Like that's huge for them to get UCF at home. So we've talked about in last week's pod that Ben Hill Griffin Stadium is one of the most difficult places to play when Florida's good. I think early on, this place is going to be bumping because Florida has not gone, the losses haven't racked up. They're not losing steam in that regard. That's the better way to say it. Before the season's gone bad, it's a difficult place to play. I think a lot of those early season road games are a lot tougher than people kind of think. Like, what was it? North Carolina went Virginia Tech season opener a couple years ago when they were like preseason top 10 and got upset. I just think going on the road, everyone's got that hope that this year could be the year. The fan base, there's no negativity week 1. No. And look, like the back end, I will agree, from Tennessee on is brutal for Florida. But I don't know. I think people who are just like, 3-9 or it's going to be a disaster in the 3.5. I think there's a chance Florida's undefeated going to Neyland. And I hope that's not the case because I don't want any part of undefeated Florida coming in to Tennessee in mid-October, which is going to be weird that it's this late in the season that they're playing the Gators at Tennessee. But after that, like if you want to tell me that it's going to be a disaster after, because you get Kentucky at home, at Georgia in Jacksonville, at Texas, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, and then at Florida State, like you're just not going to find a tougher back end of the schedule anywhere in the country. Like that's the toughest, no question. I don't know where these rankings are coming from. I'm looking on FBSschedules.com and they got a little number next to everybody. They have Kentucky 23, Miami 24, and A&M 25. I don't know what rankings have that, but if their rankings are correct, that's 9 ranked teams on Florida's schedule. But the crazy part is Miami is at home, A&M is home, Kentucky is home, LSU is home, Ole Miss is home, Florida or Georgia is not on the road, as a neutral site. Yeah. So it's kind of unfortunate if you're a Florida fan, because it feels like, I mean, other than the fact that this is Napier's job potentially on the line, that it might be as good as this super difficult schedule could get, if that's the silver lining, I guess. But yeah, it's maybe some of those home games it can bounce their way, and that could at least set them up for not being as disappointed when they lose 4 or 5 of their final 6 games. But I don't know. It could be the DJ Lagway show. So don't sleep on that. Final one here, Matt.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.